Hello, my friends. So today I'm going to be talking about an event that I consider to be an early instance, an 8th century instance to be exact, of Psy-Ops, psychological operations carried out to further an agenda. And in this case, it's the Christian elite agenda. And the event that I'm referring to is the felling of Thor's oak. Which happened in Germany, outside of Hesse, I think. And it was carried out by Saint Boniface. And so first I'm just going to tell you the story, and then I'll explain to you why I think it was a psyop, an early version of psychological operations, what the ancients may have called a noble lie in the Platonic tradition. So Boniface was basically the contemporary Pope's right-hand man. I can't remember if the Pope at his time, I think he's lived through 2 different papacies, but if that's the correct pluralization of Pope, I'm not even sure. 2 popes he lived through, and I know Zachary was one, Pope Zachary, and he worked side by side with these guys. Actually, Saint Boniface was the one who crowned Pepin the Short, and Pepin, the crowning of Pepin the Short was the mark of the end of the Merovingian dynasties in Francia. And from then on, we have the Carolingian dynasties with Charlemagne. I think it's the Carolingian, is how you'd say it. The dynasties of Charlemagne. Pepin the Short was the father of Charlemagne. So you have Boniface crowning Pepin at the behest of the Pope. So he's basically working, doing political moves for the Pope. He's involved all over Western Europe, and he was assigned by the Pope to be the Archbishop or something, whatever the Christian title is, of Germania, which at that time, this was the 8th century, 700s, at that time it still was majority pagan. Most people living in Germany at the time were still following the native European religion of paganism. And so his job was to try to convert these people. He also tried to convert the Frisians, which allegedly was the death of him, but that's a different story. So he's sent to Germany to perform these conversions, but the local population really couldn't stand the guy. They were still very loyal to their native gods, and they still worshipped around springs and sacred groves and sacred trees. And one of these sacred trees that was very prominent at the time, lots of Germans would go and perform sacrifices or give offerings and hold sort of assemblies around these trees. And one of them was Thor's oak. On Wikipedia, the page is Donar's oak. So the story goes that Boniface approached this oak, and a great crowd gathered around. And of course, Boniface had his mercenary Christian military squad around him, keeping him protected, I'm sure, because, I mean, otherwise you wouldn't get away with this kind of thing. And allegedly, he took one swing at the oak with an axe, and after notching the tree with the one swing with his axe, a great wind came by and blew the tree down. And the crowd gathered around was so amazed by this, because they were expecting for Thor to strike Boniface down for attacking the tree. But instead, the tree fell down with just one hit. And allegedly, the whole crowd was converted. They all saw the glory of God at that moment, the glory of Yahweh, the Hebrew desert demon, and they all converted in that moment. And Boniface, the story was spread throughout the countryside, and thousands converted. And so yeah, that's the story. That's I think how one of his miracles that made him a saint or something like that. I'm not sure how all the Christian dogmas go, but the point is that obviously this is a bullshit lie. Obviously. Oh, because another part of it is that after the tree fell, it broke into 4 perfect pieces, which they then used to build a church on the site. Christians always love to defile our sacred lands and our sacred trees and groves and springs. They love to fucking defile them. But so obviously this is bullshit. Trees don't just fall because of one big gust of air came, especially great oak trees that are rooted for hundreds of years. The ones that were the largest and strongest were the ones that were worshipped at. So clearly the story's a lie. And I can imagine that, because, by the way, this wasn't a story that was just made up hundreds of years later. This was a story that somebody who was living at the same time, his name was Willibard or something like that, living at the same time as Boniface, Willibard wrote in a chronicle about this event within like 100 years of it happening, of it allegedly happening. So this was a lie that was being told even in his own lifetime, basically. Within his own contemporary period, this bullshit lie is being spread. And I think that they made up this lie as a good method of performing a Psy-Op on the German people, where if they told it, all they would have to do is have this in writing somewhere or have it illustrated, and then they could send their agents into the countryside of Germany, the rural areas, talking to different farmers who, you know, would have been superstitious, and they could tell them, oh, we were there, we saw it, we saw Boniface chop down this tree, and it fell after just a single blow, and I mean, how could you not believe in Christ after that? The power is obvious. And so all you would need is for this to be documented somehow through illustrations, which there are illustrations available, or through these chronicles that were written, and then you send your agents throughout the countryside and you tell them these lies. You say, this is what happened. And then you show them the felled tree, which they actually did fell. Probably took hours and hours to chop it down. And they say, don't you remember Thor's tree? Now it's felled, and this is how it happened. And this is just one way of spreading an idea. You tell a lie about it, and you get people to go and spread the lie. And so, I mean, I really don't have much direct evidence to support this idea, but we all know that it's impossible for a tree to fall down after a gust of wind and then break into 4 perfect pieces. Doesn't happen. So if we assume that the story's bullshit, and we assume that these Christian elites were liars, which they were. And why do I think that the Christian elites were liars? Well, as early as the end of the 4th century, early 5th century with St. Augustine, Platonism and Christianity were synthesized already. And Plato, from the very start, and this is why if you look at any Western university and you look at a history of Western thought class, I took one at Loyola University with the Jesuits. Plato is always the starting point for the history of Western thought, and they show how his ideas have basically remained continuous into Christian thought, especially when you look at someone like Augustine, however you say his name. And this was centuries after Augustine. So his Neoplatonist ideas were pretty well accepted in church scholarship. And Plato talked about what he called the noble lie, which was a bullshit story, a falsehood that was made up in order to further a social agenda and was knowingly proliferated by an elite. And so these Christian miracles, these bullshit lies, I think were an example of some like Neoplatonic Christianized form of the idea of a noble lie. Because, I mean, the Christians also, throw in another quote, Prudentius, in the 4th century, or I think it was the 4th century, said that the goal of Christianity was unity in mankind and international amity. And that the Church of Christ demands for all of mankind to be of one brotherhood and whatnot. So they believed that what they were doing was something good by subverting the Germans' native faith and getting them to join with the Christians because they wanted all of mankind to be unified. So they had reason to tell these lies, and they had reason to feel good about telling these lies in their own sick, twisted way. So, anyways, I'm already late at work. Thanks for watching. Bye.